Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Always Forward podcast, and I'm here with my good friend, longtime friend, Mr. Clint Emerson. Do you go by Clint Emerson, former Navy SEAL?
Sure.
Like
retired.
Like Ray, like, but you have to say it like Ray does every time. Like it has to be
no. Yeah, I didn't quit. I retired. So the guys with former, they didn't do the full 20, and the guys with retired did. You know. But
okay.
I think he quit. I think he quit early.
I quit early. I'm a quitter. At 12 years, I was like,
you're still a Marine.
I quit. Oh, I guess that's right. Right. You still get that right forever.
That's Marines. Marines are forever, right? Yeah. Whether you retired or not. With frogmen, no. There's a big distinguishing difference between a former guy and a retired guy.
You're just a washed up dude.
That's right.
Washed up fag.
That's
right. Former action guy. Yeah.
There you go. Make sure you define that. People get upset.
Oh, I know. It's 2022. Everybody's real sensitive. So the reason why I get you on the podcast is because a Navy SEAL wrote another book. But
yeah, that's the punchline.
It's the rugged life. And I love your books, man, because they're so, I mean, I guess obviously other than the semi-autobiography, which was just fun, but a lot of your, I guess you would call them your books, mainly are manuals, right? Would you consider them manuals?
Yeah, they're kind of my own version of a field manual, an FM that we're all used to. Yeah.
And I mean, they're one of those things that you put on the shelf and you like constantly go back. I mean, I've bought clients them. I've used them for years, man. They're fun. This one is very different. And I'm curious, what was your inspiration for writing The Rugged Life?
Up till now, as you know, I'd been providing 100 deadly skills, and each of those books allowed you to survive for seconds, minutes, hours, even days, right?
Get off the X. Yeah, get off the X and survive. Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, the first book had kind of like covert stuff. The second book was more like big disasters. The third book was all about, man versus man or person versus person or they versus they or her, pronoun, their, whatever.
Them versus them.
Them versus them. So however you label yourself, the third book will cover you as far as kicking someone's ass. But then I kind of thought, wait a minute, those are all situations that most people who live a pretty normal, good life probably are not going to get themselves in those situations.
Right.
And if they do, yes, they need to know it. But what are the odds of it happening? It's pretty slim for the most part.
Do you actually,
at the same time,
I'm sure you have with Escape the Wolf, which is one of your other companies that you do a lot of the force protection stuff, right? So I guess not just force protection, you do kind of everything with Escape the Wolf, corporate security.
Yeah.
So with that, I lost my train of thought. What'd you say?
I'll fill it in for you.
Yeah.
Let me fill it in for you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So the 100 deadly skills, even Escape the Wolf, was giving people the ability to survive under crisis type situations, whatever that crisis is. The rugged life is more of a lifestyle than I feel like is more necessary these days after getting through a pandemic, right? During the pandemic, I thought to myself, look at all these people, like they don't know how to do anything. And the pandemic forced technology to develop things that made us lazier and more complacent, right? We can have food delivered to our front door now.
Yeah.
We can get our coffee order and then
you don't have to leave the house.
The drive-through.
Yeah, ever.
You don't have to leave the house because the technology that we're enslaved to. But I think, too, people started realizing, like, oh, I don't really know how to do shit if technology didn't work, right? So the rugged life was really triggered by the realization of what people are lacking right now as far as skills, and that's daily life skills.
So I was going to ask, so because through the Escape to Work, do you actually have statistics on some of these other getting held up at a gas station or being in some sort of event versus kind of like what you're talking about with the rugged life, like needing to know first aid, needing, like I'm going through the book and dude, this is another great FM, but do you have general statistics through that sort of thing?
Nothing current. I used to have a ton, and a lot of them are spread out in 100 Deadly Skills, as you've read.
Yeah.
But the reality is if I were to take the big 5 crises that someone could face, which is travel, right? Mm-hmm. Any kind of crisis during travel, medical events, right? Natural disaster, cyber, right?
Yep.
And then you got man-made, right?
Right.
So if you break down, like obviously active shooter would fall under man-made. If you click on the wrong link, that falls under cyber, but so on and so forth. If you were to take those categories and then list out all of the different possibilities that fall under them, then yes, the odds are you will face 1, 2, 3 of those in your lifetime. There's no doubt about it, because the list gets so damn big, especially under medical, right?
Right.
Medical, if you were to list out, all the different disease process plus trauma, like sprain your ankle. Yes, you're probably going to sprain your ankle
at some point. Right.
So when you list out all the things you could potentially face, then the odds are you're going to face 1, 2, 3, 4, dozens of them in a lifetime, just depending on which category. But the big difference between that and the rugged life is the rugged life isn't about crisis. It's about how do I create an air gap between me and all of that's going on around me, right? Like, it's still crisis oriented, because the more self-reliant you are, the less that the supply chain issues affect you, the less that the economy affects you, the less that, the war in Ukraine affects you, right? So the more you do for yourself, everything you do for yourself, you're cutting out something that you're relying on. And by doing so, all of a sudden you become more independent and have a whole lot more freedom. And that's really the overall objective of the rugged life, and to get people to start embracing that self-reliance as a lifestyle, so that they don't have to worry about all this shit we're seeing in the news every day.
And you kind of like through you kind of nailed it just earlier, is the past couple of years, man, people have really, really allowed themselves to become victimized and just dependent on everything around them. The systems that's been put in place. I mean, it was like that before, but the last 2 years really has, pulled out the whole, kind of, I'm a victim. And all of your books, and including this one, has really is like you said, is a manual for people not to do that, to take back control, to take some sort of information and to go, I am in control of my life. Whether it be, you get a flat on the side of a highway, how to handle that, or if you turn the corner and you're inside of a riot, it's all about like, okay, I am in control of my life, and this is the information, these and this one and the other ones is the information of how to protect myself, my property, my family, and that. So you are a very smart individual. I know that. But
I am.
But duh. Did you know every single thing about this book, or did you do some serious traveling and research to kind of develop some of these things?
So yes, I traveled and I went to what I feel are experts. I roamed the country, went to people who live on grid, off grid, and then partial. And for those listening that don't understand what off grid, on grid is, sometimes we think of that as I'm just moving out to the middle of nowhere. And that's kind of true, but off grid refers to power grid. And so if you're off grid, then you're providing and being your own power grid. If you're on grid, then you're paying a monthly bill of some sort.
There's a meme of like, I want to be off grid, and there's like a guy that lives in a cave, but there's a LAN cord that's like going into the cave because he's still connected to the internet.
Yeah. The landline. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, people have different thoughts on it, but the book isn't so much about going off grid and isolating yourself and, chopping wood and keeping yourself warm every day. It really has nothing to do with that. It's more about providing skills that folks that are very much self-reliant, taking those skills from them and going, okay, now how can we apply this to someone who lives in an apartment in Manhattan? How can we apply this to someone who lives in suburbia America that has a small backyard?
Right.
How can we apply this to then also those that have chosen to move out of the cities? They've gone and bought a cabin in the woods because of the pandemic, and they really have no idea what they're doing, And so this book applies to all three different environments and then some, to include, what's become very popular is like van life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is more of like a nomadic, self-reliant world that is super cool. I've even done that, and I still do it, and I love it. But
you've got
so
your little,
it really
you've got your little
encompasses
tactical A-team van that you've been traveling around. Did you use that van to get some of the material for this book? That trip?
Yeah. For some of them, yeah. Some of them, it was a time crunch, so I just flew in and rented a car. But
yeah,
I use that van as much as I can for different stuff. It's great.
So tell me we'll do the top and the low. As you were researching this, what was the low? What was the worst trip or worst experience that you had to go do and to get some information for this book?
Well, I wouldn't say it was any bad, but challenging.
There you go. We'll go challenging.
I went and visited a family that live way off grid, northern Idaho, pretty close to like Canada, right?
Okay.
And these are people that were referred to me through the Homesteaders of America Society, so I didn't know them. They live in literally the boonies, and here I am kind of driving into these worlds. And once you got, within 10 miles, there was zero cell phone connection. There was absolutely nothing. And I started thinking to myself, like, wow, I've written all these books on preparedness, and here I am going into the middle of nowhere to meet with people that, who the hell knows who they are, right?
Yeah, with a rent-a-car. With a rent-a-car.
with a rental car. I was smart enough to get a Tahoe with 4-wheel drive, which I ended up needing.
Yeah.
And they kind of gave me like this. It was a post office. It's crazy. It was like this. And the post office was equivalent to probably a 30-year-old trailer home that was sitting right at the T intersection of a mud road and a fire break, right? And so the fire break, he was like, the guy told me like whatever, days prior, before me actually getting there, that I'll meet you. I'll come down the fire break and grab you. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I wait and I wait and I wait. And then eventually, I'm looking up the fire break, and here he comes. And, he gets out, and you could tell there was hesitation on both parts, right? We're just both kind of like, who are you? What do you want? Even though we know who you're wearing the right uniform, you're at the right time in the right place. So obviously we're both the right people, but it was still just this moment.
Bona fide still needs to happen, right? Yeah.
Bona fide still needed to happen, which
so once we got through, did he just pop out of the woods, or did he show up how did he show up? In a truck?
He had a 4-wheel drive truck.
Okay.
And we kind of did the acknowledgments and everything, and then he was like, all right, follow me. And so I'm following him up this fire break, and I started wondering, like, does this guy actually own the land that we're going to go to? Like, because fire breaks as a form of transportation isn't normal, like right. as a main thoroughway, yeah. Right? And so anyway, I follow him up, and we get to, we pass up one cabin on the right, and it was a nice cabin. And then we get to the one he actually lives in, which was equally cool, but it was a tiny home, right? It was super small. We're talking 300 square feet.
Wow.
And then, his wife, and their son, that's special needs, have been living there for, I think they've been living out there for over a dozen years, completely self-reliant. And the amount of lessons learned they had from going from their 1,100 square foot cabin that they built to the 300, was phenomenal. And the engineering behind the tiny home compared to what they had, just using every bit of space and everything had a function. You know, it was just you could see how much they had advanced by going small and going less, right? Going with less made them more advanced for that environment they lived in. That was probably the bigger holistic takeaway with it. But anyway,
so why did they go from 1,100 cabin to a 300 cabin?
Power. So they run on solar. Yeah.
It makes sense.
And so, they were able to go basically, they had were able to go to 300 watt solar panels. They had 3 of them, providing 300 watts for that home. And that's all they needed, right?
Wow.
So they realized the 1,100 square feet was still too much space. You know, when you're doing a true self-reliant lifestyle, all of a sudden it's like, well, hey, we're trying to power all this extra space. We're trying to heat all this extra space. It doesn't even make sense, right?
Right.
So they reduced their size down to 300 square feet, and now, you know, you're talking like just 100% efficiency across the board with every little thing they do.
It's like the room.
But it was just
like the room. I think it's like the room that I'm in right now. This is their house.
Yeah. Same with me. I'm like in a garage space. So if you think of like a little, you know, probably a deep 1-car garage, that's probably, you know, your 300, you know, it's a little deeper than your average 1-car garage would be 300 square feet, you know?
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, and they were the happiest people, you know, all smiles, everything they did. And it's not, you know, like, hey, they went and bought lumber and built their cabin. They literally cut down trees and milled their own boards. And this was the other piece I thought was just, I had never heard of this, is they have these brackets that will attach to a chainsaw. And I purposely put it in the book.
I was going to say, that's in the book.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal idea. A chainsaw mill, right?
Wow.
So once you cut the tree down, you strip all the branches, you can use that chainsaw cutting that tree, you know, vertically, you know, and creating boards.
Right.
And then, you know, you look at what he's built, or both of them, what they have built, and you go, how many damn trees did that take, and how long did it take? It was like better part of a year to build their first one. They lived in a tent for a year. And keep in mind, this is northern Idaho.
That's crazy.
And chopped down trees, milled their own boards, and built the first cabin, which was 1,100 square feet. Okay. Now, of course, once they did that and they were able to build the 300 square foot one, it went really fast because they had all the resident knowledge and knew exactly, you know, they knew exactly what they were doing.
Experience cuts down a lot of time.
No doubt.
Yeah.
And, but anyway, it was a very, there was moments there because they had been isolated for a while and they don't get visitors. And so, you know, it wasn't bad or it wasn't a horrible experience. It was just, there was that initial awkwardness, you know, and of course me, I show up and I'm kind of looking around like, you know, what's really going on here? I remember, I was like, hey, you know, I just needed to use the restroom. So they had this outhouse. But I was like, hey, I don't want to mess with anything you guys got. I'll just pee, you know, where can I pee safely without peeing on something that you use? And they're like, oh, just go around the corner over there and, you know, beware. Don't worry, you know, what you see around the corner, don't worry about it. And I go around and it's like all these different animal hides strung up, stretching out, you know. But it was a scene out of any kind of like, you know, what most people probably consider a horror movie with, you know, animal parts everywhere and hides hanging up. And
hey man, that's the life. That's the life though. What's interesting, you talk to me about them being so happy, and it's like, you know, there's something to that. There's something to less is more. And I think
that's right.
I think that, you know, guys like myself and you and, you know, we work really hard to build what we to do in our businesses and whatnot. But there is, you know, sometimes I have to remind myself that, you know, I do it all the time, but that there's nothing wrong with simplicity, and you take away all this stuff because, I mean, I imagine that the pandemic for them, they were like, what? You know?
Yeah, exactly.
What?
That's the air gap I was referring to. Like if you go all the way with this kind of stuff, like, regulations, rules, wear a mask. I mean, none of it applies to you. What's going on with the supply chain doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Right? I mean, nothing you have, and it, once again, it anchors to ultimate independence and freedom. And that's, I think, what people are missing right now, because we are so handicapped by, these devices that we all have, and it's made us lazy and complacent.
Yeah. Okay. So so how long were you there?
Just a full day. Yeah. Full
so
day
you didn't even stay. You just went there and then bailed and then left.
Yeah. Cause really, when you're going to, the deal, you're going to people's homes, and it's kind of like, I didn't want to invade, but a full day was plenty to see just how much work it takes to be 100% off grid. It's not an easy life. It's a very fulfilling and satisfying life.
Yeah.
But it's hard work constantly.
Because everything's on you. You wake up, you get to work, and you work until you go to bed.
That's right.
Yeah.
Every little thing you do is to, either stay warm, stay dry, stay fed.
Yeah.
Your water, the whole water catchment programs that these folks set up, I mean, is phenomenal because it's free. And I really touch on some of that. I touch on the water catchment stuff because that, once again, how do you take people off grid and bring those skills to somebody who lives in suburbia America?
I noticed.
Right? Well,
I noticed it was a little bit different than the survival guide. The survival guide's more.
It's not survival, yeah.
Yeah, survival guide's more along the lines like, oh shit, I need water, I'm gonna die. This is like, how do I have water forever?
This is just thriving right. For free. Imagine water catchment. We all have homes, we all have sheds, we all have something where water falls on it, right?
Yeah.
And if you've already got a rain gutter system, then you already got 90% of the solution to having free water for the rest of your life. But we don't do it because we're lazy. So one of the things you can do, I think people will enjoy hearing, is I put an easy math equation in there. You take the square footage of your roof, and for simple math, we'll say 1,000 square foot roof, and you get 1 inch of rain.
Okay.
That equates to roughly 650 gallons of free water.
Holy shit.
1 inch rain. And we get multiple 1 inch rains all year round, all over the United States. Even if you live in
I'm in North Carolina. Like, it's just like it's raining all the time.
Yeah. Right. Now, if you go, let's say you go to like Arizona's and New Mexico's and the real arid areas, they still get, on average, a foot of rain a year. It's not that much, but imagine if you could catch
every bit of it.
That 12 inches, right? It would give you plenty. And when you're talking about off-gridders, that's water for their gardens, that's water for them, and it's water for their animals, right? Yeah. And so that water catchment piece, I was like, dude, anybody could, if you've got a shed out back, you just put some gutters around it. You got your home, you take those down pipes, and you're just going to redirect them into these food-safe water containers you can order off Amazon for, $20. And you can buy them in like either 50-gallon, you can buy 100, you can buy 500. Hell, they make them all the way up to like 10,000 gallons if you really want your own gravity water system, It's pretty amazing, but simple stuff. Simple stuff.
I had an idea. So for like people that, I don't know, if you have dehumidifiers in your house, but I had this idea that you could set a dehumidifier in your house, and then how they have it, that you have pipes that you can run outside if you have it like in a garage or whatnot.
Condensation.
Yeah. So as it comes in, you could go out to the house, and I was like, well, what if I could put this through a filtration system and then pipe it back into the house? So I'm just literally collecting water out of the air and then run it back to their house. Somebody's gonna listen to that and then take that as they should.
Yeah.
All right. So that was the most challenging or interesting. What was the fun? I guess the most fun one. I want to say best, but one of the highlight of your experience.
Probably the other one that was really they're all interesting families, but probably the more on grid family. They're in northern probably. What were they? Probably about 2 hours north of Seattle, I think.
Okay.
And so
also close, also basically Canadian.
Yeah. I mean, obviously beautiful terrain all over that area, and I see why people pick. There's a lot of off-grid homesteading going on in that that northwest area, the Cascade Mountains. I mean, it's beautiful. Every turn you take is a fucking photograph. I mean, it's just awesome.
Yeah.
So up there, I visited a family that are on grid, but they literally have been. She grew up. Her house is literally a block from the house she was born in. Right? They have been living this lifestyle for a very long time, and most of it is on the farming side. And so that was really the first kind of piece for me. I definitely didn't know anything about farming, and and she is a wealth of knowledge. And stepping back to more macro, when you hear farming, it's kind of boring, but the reality is like a farm, it produces things to be sold and make money, whereas a homestead, you produce things to feed the family, right? So that's kind of the difference between the two. So hers was more of a homestead, but she grew like everything they eat. I mean, she grew it. I mean, I was just blown away, and she was doing it with, I think, maybe a half acre, maybe a little bit more. Yeah. So a very small, I mean, when you talk about the amount she was able to do with a very confined space of a backyard, I was blown away. She had hogs in a corner. Okay. She had a system where the pigs are in one corner, and the pigs will move around. Because what they'll do is they'll eat everything to include the roots, and they basically, by the time they get done, it's nothing but mud, right? So you move those around, and then that's going to designate your new crop area, right? So once they turn it from grass to mud, they've uprooted everything so much that becomes great soil.
Yeah,
right? Because they've also been crapping all over it.
I was going to say, because if you've ever seen a pig pen or whatever you want to call it, it is literally just water and mud and like wet soil, like ready to go.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And they don't ever start that way. I think that's the part people miss, is that when you move your pig pen around, which then creates, your next crop area. Then the other piece was her chickens. So her chickens were in a mobile coop. This coop had wheels. So it allowed the chickens to be free range, right? Eating bugs and hanging out in the grass and doing everything. And then it would fertilize the grass, because chicken poop is the best fertilizer on the market. I mean, you can't find anything better. So those chickens would hang out in that area for about 2 weeks, and then she would move them exactly one square over, if you will, because the chicken coop is, whatever dimensions it was, you're moving an entire dimension over. And so she had this rotation between the chickens, the pigs, and then, of course, how she grew her crops. And I was just like, holy crap, like this system that fed her family plenty all year round. I mean, she's got enough where she's giving it away to the neighbors, right? Yeah. I mean, a dozen eggs is like, a dozen chickens is a dozen eggs a day. Yeah. Right? Right. So, and then going back and forth between the different kinds of chickens, right? So you have egg-laying chickens, and then you have meat chickens, right? You're never going to eat an egg-laying chicken, and your meat chickens aren't going to be producing eggs the way you want them to. So you usually have a little bit of both. Or you can just have egg layers, and that's it. But here's the interesting part. You live in a neighborhood, and you got HOAs, right? People that are putting rules on you, say you can and can't do whatever. Well, you can list your chickens as service animals. That way, then the HOA can do absolutely nothing about you having chickens.
I'm just back there petting my chickens.
That's right. And whatever brings you calmness and prevents the anxiety, that's a service animal. That's right. And so the other piece too is if chickens are noisy, right? But you can just switch to hens. Hens, great. They lay eggs and they're quiet. So, but it was really, really cool to see an on-grid, right? So she relies on power for the home, but she's doing, she's got a full-on, farm in her backyard. Amazing.
Wow. Was she was she in a suburb? Was she kind of still in the country? Like, how did that?
She's surrounded by other homes, but all of them have big lots, let's say, just kind of big lot homes. Not big homes, but just big lots.
Yeah. So it wasn't like, a neighborhood we see, in like your area or my area where we're currently at. Like house,
No, not for
basically,
them.
Like house
Yeah.
on top of house on top of house.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, that would be somebody we both know, which would be Pat McNamara.
Yeah.
So he lives, in a what we would think of a a major developed
suburban developed
area.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but he's got chickens. He grows a lot of his own food, and and he does it just fine. And he's had to actually kind of list everything as service animals, so he could get away with it in his HOA.
He's a pretty
so the point
slick
being,
dude.
Yeah. So, once again, like my goal wasn't to say this book isn't to go and tell everybody to move to middle of nowhere. It's like, no. You can stay where you're at and just implement some of this great stuff.
Implement some of these things to be less reliant on the system. Being
right.
Being more self-reliant, which is actually
exactly
it's on the cover of the book.
That's right. And the most important part is it's the rugged life, but in the subtitle, the modern guide to self-reliance, modern, right? I'm not saying throw your cell phones away, throw everything away and, start living like a caveman. Nobody wants to do that. That's ridiculous. Modern means, hey, you're still going to have a cell phone, but you're just going to use it in a more self-reliant way rather than, ordering
it goes back to that
Starbucks.
Thing like we were talking about. It's like just not being a victim and taking control of your life and the areas that you have control over. If you're living in in New York, there's a way to be less, reliant on the grid. Essentially, there's little things that you can do to be a little bit more, self-reliant. So in the book, man, the first content page, I just like.
Yeah,
I the way that you did it, or the way the guys did it, like it's just great because it has that little bit of like the 100 Deadly Skills aspect of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like be your own RTO, be your own first responder. But then it has the other things. But it struck me because I could literally print this out into like a poster and hang it up somewhere, and it would be like a reminder. All these things,
Yeah.
Be your
it's
own
really
farmer,
the 10
be your own hunter.
aspects.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's the 10. What I found, because this was the hardest part of building this book, was what am I narrowing this lifestyle down to in the form of chapters? And each chapter are novels and novels of books out there. But nobody has taken all of those books and all that knowledge and consolidated it into a more holistic, basic manual.
Yeah.
And that's really why, yeah.
So one of the things that struck me, so I've got like some Post-it notes in here as I was going through it.
Nice.
But
love it.
One of the things that I've always been a big fan of is the container homes. So is that something that you just have kind of been exposed to over the years or something, or did you actually go and look at some container homes and do some research that way as well?
Both. So I remember showing up overseas, after we established.
We lived in those. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I lived in them, the ones that were set up in Africa, the ones in Afghanistan, Iraq. I mean, you obviously, if you do enough deployments, you live in a bunch of these prefabricated, container homes. For those listening that don't know what we're talking about, look at the 18-wheeler driving down the road as you listen to this podcast. And that big container on the back, you can turn into a home, you can turn it into a gym, you can turn it into whatever you want. And so,
pretty amazing.
Yeah,
you just go scroll through social media and just searching this, or Google search this. They've gotten crazy with these container homes. I mean, beautiful homes.
Yeah, it's a inexpensive, cool way to kind of have your own little fort. Because if you stack these things and create a square almost, you can have this cool home with a courtyard in the center. And I mean, you can replace a lot of the walls with glass and make it really modern. I mean, there's so many ways you can go with these things.
Yeah, and I think the going price for a container, for a 40-foot container, is like $2,500 to $5,000 per container.
Yeah,
and that's just
for used ones.
Yeah, just for a used one, and then you start construction. I mean, that's what we did in Afghanistan. Is we got a bunch, and if we were at a very remote fob, and then as supplies would come in off of a supply run, we would just keep the containers, and then start fabricating them out and building little, like we did crazy stuff, desk, and then like, you know, bunk beds or have your like loft bed and then your desk is underneath and then all your gear and having living rooms. And you guys did the same thing, I'm sure.
Probably the one that I thought, the one that I did completely on my own is when I was at the NSA. We needed like extra space on Fort Washington. So Fort Washington has all this land, but we needed to rapidly get something up and running, right?
Yeah.
And so I found this company out of New Jersey, and keep in mind this is this is like 2005, 2006, so the prices aren't going to be accurate, but for a brand new 40-footer, completely climate controlled, with pedestrian doors on the side and windows, and it was all cool. And we loaded it out. That particular one was loaded out with Vidmars on the inside, like cool like drawers and stuff, with butcher block tables. And I mean, just designing it was fun. Total for that thing completely, and that was even delivering it and like putting it on the ground and plugging it in was $40,000.
Damn,
you know,
all done,
and it was all done, ready to go. Showed up. I was like, this is so fucking cool. Like, who wouldn't do this, right?
What's crazy is like the built out vans. You can build out a van now that's like $120,000, $150,000.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially post tonight. Yeah. Mine is the one I've got is now selling for about that. I didn't buy it for that much, but now they're selling for that much. Yeah.
So the next one, I mean, there's so many good things in here, and I couldn't just go through it all. But the next one that I did was basically down to the poison. But then I started looking, I was like, shrooms. And I'm like, I wonder if Clint had to taste a bunch of shrooms to put this. Did you go on a shroom trip when you went in there? And
I've thought about it several times.
I think that's one of the biggest, you're talking about living off the grid or living on the grid or just living in the woods in general. There are so many plants that are medicinal for good purposes, and maybe it's for, then not for, like what's the kid that died in the bus over there? I don't remember exactly the name of it. I know they just left. They just took the bus out of that park because so many people were going to go see it and dying in the same way. They were getting across the river or getting mauled by a bear or whatever. Mark, do you remember that movie? It was the kid who like gave up. He's like, I'm gonna go live off the grid, and he like went to some park.
Yeah. And then just like last year, they like helicoptered his bus out. Right? Yeah, he was living in that movie. Yeah. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
What was it?
Yeah,
Into the Wild. Yeah.
Into the Wild.
Yeah, but he died. He died of poison. He poisoned himself with some.
That's right.
Yeah, he ate the wrong thing.
Something.
Anyways, so
it's easy to get them mixed up.
Yeah. So what was your kind of inspiration, or what did you do there? Did you go on a mushroom trip, or did you just go talk to some really smart people?
That was definitely that was a combination of interviewing with these families. And the takeaway there is foraging, right? Yeah. I mean, like, so the big kind of the other big macro way of looking at this book is, when you get into kind of self-reliance, it doesn't necessarily have to start with food, even though that's kind of what we're talking about. It also starts with just being more handy, just doing things yourself with your hands. Foraging is definitely with your hands and knowing what is good and what is not, out there. So I put in a quick poison test so that folks can, if you don't know what it is, but it looks edible or you think it's edible, or maybe you do know exactly what it is, but you still want to test it anyway, which is always a good idea. I put the poison test in there. But foraging, hunting, farming, building, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not good at farming, you better be good at hunting and foraging.
Right.
And if you're not good at those two, then you better be good at farming.
Right.
And everyone needs to have some building basics, really. That's really what it boiled down to, because and once again, this is worst case scenario people, right? Yeah. People who have lived completely out there. If you ask them, what are the most important aspects of being self-reliant? It's be a builder, be a farmer, be a hunter, and mainly because the seasons, right? The seasons will drive the hunting and farming. There's times when there's nothing to farm, right? You got to go hunt. or you got to go forage,
Right.
and vice versa. So, yeah, it was all research based, and a lot of intertwined into each chapter is definitely the interviews with these families.
The next one is, and I couldn't, I love the $100 skills books, especially some of the funnier things in there, like the prison purse and whatnot.
Yeah.
The one of the best ones, and I just had a picture. We've been friends for a long time, and I got to milking a goat. I just had a picture of Clint out there milking some goats. Did you milk a goat, Clint?
I did mess with one, and I was like, how did my fingers go to squeeze the teat? The teat. It's right out of that movie, man. What's the one with he's sitting at the dinner table, the Fockers?
Oh yeah, I got nipples, Focker. Yeah. You milk me.
yeah. That's all that was running through my head, and I was probably joking about it at the time, but it's
so it's
not that everyone
I've never
needs to
milked
go get
a goat
just so they can. Once you if you jerk off on a regular basis, and depending on the technique you use, milking a goat really isn't all that. Yeah, it's not that bad.
Okay.
If you're using a lubricant and you're really working it towards the head, you're really doing the same motion on the teat of the goat.
And that's how you get the milk out.
That's how you get the milk out. Yeah.
Nice. Well, good to know.
And the biggest thing the other piece I didn't know is once you kind of
every guy out there can at least, if he gets some farm animals, at least he'll have some milk.
That's right. Because if you know how to milk your own big, whatever it is, nipple,
then
large, you will know how to do
nipple.
Yes.
Anyways, I interrupted you. You were saying.
Yes, as we digress. The interesting part too, it's not just take a goat, throw them in a stall where there's a lot of nurturing that goes on. You know what I mean? You got to these goats, they don't just, it's not voluntary. It's something you have to train them to get used to, and you got to talk to them. No different than probably how we all talk to our dogs, right? Yeah. We love on them, we pet them, we let them know they're doing a good job, and and I think I never really correlated that until I was around some of these animals.
I never would have thought that.
Yeah, you just kind of they're part of the family to a certain degree, and so you're talking to them, you're keeping them calm while you're taking what you want from them. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, yeah.
I guess in a, it's kind of like a horse, right? You don't want to just manhandle a horse. You kind of it's a when you work with a horse, it's a partnership.
It is. They're relationships. All of it's relationship. Yeah.
That makes sense. The other one was the pigs, which you actually brought up on your own, because I think that's one of the most, probably the one. I mean, a lot of this stuff is unknown, but that's a really unknown one. Is the pig pen and what they do to the ground and soil, and also with a pig pen, if you're homesteading, it's a great way to dispose of a body.
Exactly. They do eat everything.
Everything.
There'll be absolutely nothing left. That is for sure.
Yeah. Another thing that I think that obviously you and I overlook it, our demographic overlooks it, is the gun overview, the gun safety, the hunting, sight alignment, sight picture, different types of, rounds for different types of game. By no means am I an avid hunter. I don't think, and I don't think you are either. No. Neither of us are any Cameron Haynes or anything like that. But we understand this operation. And I think that the majority of people don't. So I thought that it was interesting that you did that. But what was your basis for that? Because obviously it's not very militant, but however, safety, like you start out, boom, safety first. It's like,
that's right.
And maybe that is part of your militant background.
Yeah.
We're going to start here. But anyways, your thoughts on gun overview and safety for the general populace of homesteading or being off the grid?
The hunting piece is it's necessary for those that do live truly off grid. I mean, there's no reason not to. I focused on one, just keeping it simple, right? A lot of avid hunters may read that section and be like, oh, why did he pick those rounds? Why did he pick that bolt action illustration? But, keep in mind, I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible and fiscally sound, right? I didn't put a semi-automatic rifle in there for a reason, because we can all go grab dad's old bolt action or grandpa's bolt action
and get the job
put
done.
that thing to use.
Yep.
For free. Exactly. The rounds I chose, I know that, as you and I both know, going to SHOT Show, it's like a bunch of high school kids.
Right.
So,
I
stuck with.
I don't even want to crack the egg open on like, well, you could, and this and that and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
Jesus Christ, dude. Okay.
I know. And that's why I stuck with, I went with the, mostly NATO rounds, because on the outside world, they're readily available, they're cost effective, and we know they work, right? Yeah. So I left it very simple in that chapter because it's for someone who just wants a general knowledge. Everything from sighting in. One of the challenges, though, when you're writing, and this, is like, how do I say the most with the least amount of words and it still makes sense, right? And it still deliver the message. And so,
well, that's what you want, right?
You want
to deliver the message in the least amount of words possible.
That's right.
Yeah.
And when I'm doing that, that is the hardest part with 100 Deadly Skills and with any of the books I've done right now, because I pride myself on simplifying complex shit.
Yeah.
And then that means also using words that keep it simple and not getting too crazy. And so when you talk about sighting in a rifle, like explaining that, it becomes a big pain in the ass because it's real easy to nuke it. And so I was like, okay, I'm not going to nuke it. We're going to keep it simple. You're going to get close to the target. You're going to pull the trigger. Then you're going to slowly back up, and you're going to keep pulling the trigger, making sure everything is sighted based on what you're looking through, And so it's, But hunting is just cool, right? I mean, obviously, bow hunting has gotten really popular, and I debated putting it in there, but then that would have required, when you talk about scent and stealth and camouflage and getting danger close to an animal, I'll save that for potentially the next rugged life.
Okay. So did you go, I mean, you did a great job, by the way, explaining all this, the sighting for your rifle, the safety, shot placement for ethical kills. Like even though it's small, it is very clear, especially to a beginner. Did anybody that you come across, and I know that reloading your own ammo and making your own ammo, like for the people that do it on the grid, it's expensive hobby.
Mm-hmm.
Did you run across anybody that is truly managing that on their own?
Yeah, several, two of the families, they definitely do that, and they'll admit, okay, so you hit on something that is hit on in the book. Going full on self-reliant is not cheap.
Right.
No aspect of any of this is cheap.
Right.
So now, can it save you money in the long run? Yes. But 12 chickens versus a carton of eggs, you're going to spend less money on the carton of eggs, right?
Right.
Same thing with bullets. Buying your bullets or then buying everything you need plus the materials to make your own bullets, well, it's probably cheaper to go to Walmart and buy your bullets, right? So it's a give and take situation across the board, but you have to when you take longevity into consideration, that's when you'll actually make your money back. But it's not going to happen just because you decided to be self-reliant at home in your suburban house.
Right. And then before I do the last one, because it's personal to me, the second to last is medical. And holy shit, man.
Yeah.
Like that right there is the game changer if you're off grid. And we know that from, base being on mission or being overseas or anything like that. Like that's one of the biggest things it could be anything from just a guy falling down or falling off, slipping on patrol and falling down on a cliff or something, which we've had guys that do that and they've broken their backs and this and that. And now we're in a really shitty situation. But, apart from the poison test, the medical aspect of being your own first responder. Did you have any stories or anybody tell you or anything that happened while you're in your travels of learning things?
Yeah, I found it interesting that most of them have really an extensive like Casevac, Medevac plan. They don't even know that that's what they've done, but that's what they've done, right? Because they'll tell you like, well, 911 works, but we know that it's going to take a helicopter to get in here. And it's going to probably take 30 minutes or an hour plus, right? So they admittedly knew that that means that my level of education as it relates to medicine and being a first responder is important. And so distance to a hospital or your distance in proximity to someone coming to your rescue drives the level of education you require.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the further away you are from help, the more education you better have. And so the medical chapter is, and being your own first responder is putting people, like, to make them think, right? Hey, a 9-line. Come up with your own 9-line and then put it everywhere, right? If you have a shed, put your 9-line in the shed. If you in the kitchen, you're going to have your 9-line. You have your 9-line in your backpack. You're going to have one in, if you carry a fanny pack, it's going to be everywhere, And so, and what that does is that's kind of like the beginning of forcing, your CASEVAC, medevac planning. And then we get into actual, current acronyms like MARCH that have been developed over the years in combat and defining it and then giving them examples on what you can do at home right now, no matter where you live. Once again, it's not about living in the middle of nowhere. It's about, thinking through these things. And by doing so, there's a certain amount of prevention that happens when you're always thinking about it,
Absolutely.
Like and preparedness.
What happens?
Right?
You're on a hunt and you're by yourself or with your kid. And you do something, and boom, break a leg, compound fracture maybe. You better know how to do some.
You got to know what to do,
or you're like essentially dead in an environment like that. Mm-hmm. So, what did anybody do actual medical training? Was it over time, or what would That's two questions. So, one, what did people do to prepare themselves on the medical side, and then two, what do you recommend people do that want to live the rugged life?
On the medical side, this is why I emphasize modern because, as we all know, every homesteader, anybody who lived, even the furthest off grid, they still leverage their phones for education, research, right? So they're part of different groups that cover this. They know their neighbors, which is a big deal, right? Your neighbors can be your first responder and you can be theirs. So talking to your neighbors is, it's always been important, but even more so when you live that far away from, a hospital or town. So that's kind of more on the medical side. Now, the bigger piece, like if you're thinking about going down this path, I say, start with a book like The Rugged Life. It doesn't have to be The Rugged Life, and take on some projects. Projects you can do right now at your house, no matter where you live. If you want to do gardening and you live in an apartment, you can do a windowsill garden, which I talk about in there. And you can grow your own herbs and use the basil straight from the dirt right into your spaghetti. I mean, there's vertical gardens. There's kits now on Amazon, these vertical garden kits. In the corner of your room, you can grow pretty much anything you want.
Almost
if you can't
everything.
afford
Yeah.
And if you can't afford a kit, you can go to a discount tire company and say, "Hey, I want all those spare tires. I'll take 6 of them." And they'll give them to you for free. And then you take those tires and you stack the first one in the corner of your room. You throw in some soil, and then you take your potato, and we're going to go Martian here, right? Anybody who saw the movie Martian, where he had to cut up potatoes, and then he used human feces as fertilizer, right? And he started growing potatoes. You can do the same thing minus the human feces. So soil into your tire, cut up your potato, throw it in there. When you see green sprout through, dump another layer, put another tire on top, and then dump another layer of dirt, and then put in potatoes. And then you're going to do this like layered cake system of dirt and potatoes throughout every time you see green pop through. And if you get like 6 tires high, and by the time you get there, within how many ever months, it's all in the book, but you're going to end up with like 100 potatoes inside that column of tires.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And, the Irish did live off potatoes because it is a carb. It's got some protein. I mean, worst case scenario, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's not a bad source of nutrition. But it's also just great to be able to do that in a confined space. You know what I mean?
I was actually, Allie and I were having this conversation. Everybody's talking about food prep and food shortages and everything. And we were laughing because of course, all these companies are like, this is 6 months of food, dry storage, blah blah blah. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I grew up in Florida, and a lot of it spent in North Florida in the Panhandle, and that's a very country-ish place, even though it's right there on the beach. But I mean, we grew up, canning things and bottling things. It was the norm. That was the norm. And I'm like, you know how cheap rice and beans are, and how easy it is to can those? There's nothing, pennies, and you could have rice and beans.
Yeah,
man. Like, people have been living off rice and beans for hundreds of years.
Right.
So
and that's what I found interesting during the pandemic. I'm sure you noticed it where you live. You went in the store, all the toilet paper was gone, but the rice and bean shelves were full.
I'm like,
it was insane to me.
I'm like, I'm good.
What happened?
I'm good. I've got plenty of rice and beans.
Yeah.
So the last one,
you bring up a great point.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. I want to.
The bigger point you're making is the norm, your norm when you were a kid and where you grew up, right? Just less than 200 years ago, every American man, woman, and child knew everything in this book and then some.
That's true.
Right? And it was a way of life.
Yeah.
And now, in 200 years or less, no one knows a damn thing that's in this book, which is crazy to me.
Which, in a way, makes us very vulnerable. I mean, yes, are we smarter? In some ways. But
of course.
In a lot of ways, we are very vulnerable. Very, very vulnerable.
And I also acknowledge, for those that are going, who's got time for this, right? Time management is definitely a key component to why we have become technologically advanced, right? If I can buy it rather than grow it, then that leaves me time and money to go do other things, which I agree. But that's not the point of the book. The point of the book is you get to pick and choose things that you can then do and have time for. That makes you that much more self-reliant, and one less thing that you have to rely on other people for.
Right.
Yeah.
So the last one that I picked out was, man,
yeah.
and if you don't see this coming, man, you missed it. I landed on the health and beauty supplies. And I'm like, man, there's a lot of Johnny Slick's inspiration in here.
It did end up like it's, in fact, I'm going to use the videos for that, like you guys.
Yeah.
Right. We're building some, just me making some of this stuff.
Yeah.
But because the Johnny Slicks formula, I'm guessing, is top secret. I didn't even ask you for it.
No, it is top secret.
I went ahead, and
there is because I think when you did that interview with Johnny, there are definitely components of things in here. This is probably the closest, I would say, to. I mean, granted, we have the ingredients on the labels and stuff, but I would say this is the closest to really how to make certain things. And very, very well done. And so why? I mean, I guess I know why, but in your opinion, like the pomade, who would have thought pomade would have been in the rugged life? But hey, man, still hair oil, pomade, coconut oil, shampoo, how to make it all, how to do it all. I mean, this is just absolutely shaving soap, body wash, lip balm, which is important, especially if you're in some of those drier climates that are trying to kill you. So what was your thought process and inspiration for, I guess, grooming products while off the, because Johnny Slicks is a sponsor of this podcast, so might as well talk about it. What was your inspiration? Yeah.
If you can't make it, you buy Johnny Slicks like I do. Interestingly enough, the hygiene aspect is important for anybody who lives off grid. Like, hygiene is everything to prevent disease, to prevent illness, any of those things. You do not want that to happen or invade your family if you live completely self-sustained in the middle of nowhere. So that's the first key, and that's why it's important. Now, some of the luxury type items, like, let's face it, pomade is a luxury item.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, I had a ghostwriter, and this chapter is solely on her. I have to give it to her.
Oh, wow.
I didn't think about it. I was like, but she's a female, and she was thinking more from the family. We're at home. We need things to do when, the weather's bad. These are projects that families can do together, regardless, once again, it doesn't matter where you live, but it's also to show the power of the coconut oil, all of these things that you know better than I do that are sitting in people's cabinets, and they think it's just for cooking, or they think it's just for,
it's one of the most, coconut oil is one of the most healing oils that you can, and that you can
Right.
use. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, she was smart enough to kind of see what I didn't as a dude. Like, I'm like, what? Homemaking? Be your own homemaker? Like, who the hell wants to do that?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, she put pretty much all those line items in there. And I remember specifically when she brought up like shampoo, conditioner, pomade, and one of the others.
Hair oil.
I said,
Shave soap.
said,
you even did shave soap, which is smart.
The shave soap. Now, I would love Johnny to cross-check those ingredients and all that because
I'll get him to do that.
She did the research on that one, on all those. And I was thankful because it kind of added an important part that I would have forgotten if she hadn't stepped in on that one.
But it's a good point because like even you even got like how to cut your own hair and how to stay clean because everybody thinks like, oh, you go to the off the grid and I turn into, what was it, Tom Hanks on Castaway. And that's and that actually can get like abscesses and you can get dirt and things that are in there that will cause infection. So, cutting your hair, keeping your beard shorter. These are things that are in that kind of environment that you're living in, where you're not taking 2 warm showers a day and living in a bubble, can affect you. And these things will do keep you clean and keep you. Absolutely great job, and I'm just glad
I appreciate that coming from you guys.
I had to throw the Johnny Slicks in there.
Yeah, it's I'd love to hear his input. But the other piece to this whole thing that also she brought up, and even the families did, is morale, right?
Okay.
Morale is a big deal when you're kind of just you and your family and you're together all the time. So morale is feeling good. Morale is looking good. And it applies to every kind of lifestyle. If I'm looking good and I'm feeling good, then I'm probably going to work a little bit harder that day.
Yeah.
Right. And then knowing that at the end of the day, there are some products that I made that are going to, wash all the dirt away and reset me, recharge me mentally and emotionally so that I can now do the next day and the next day, because that morale piece is huge, whether it's, making shampoo together as a family or, and then the actual use of it. All of it combined is all about maintaining that mental focus when you're being self-reliant, self-sufficient.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of like kind of SEER school, right? Like keeping a positive attitude and in a survival environment, right? When we're out there doing our survival stuff, that was one of the big lessons is like, hey, listen, you have to stay positive in these environments because otherwise, if you allow yourself to go down the negative rabbit hole, I mean, essentially that could kill you. Instead of just staying positive, finding the small wins in the days, like you said, like just making a product with your family and then getting all to wash your hair. That's a fucking win. You know what I mean?
It is.
What'd you do today?
Remember us.
Yeah.
Remember what, like our deployments, like,
right.
Sometimes the only reward, at least for me, was the shower at the end of the day.
Was the hot shower. And
like,
it's funny. I tell people that all today. I mean, I'm 40 years old. You're a little older than me, but still to this day, man, a hot shower. And I'm like, every hot shower, I'm like, I'm thankful for this hot shower.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Vice just like standing in the desert with some cold water bottles, just pouring them over you. You know what I mean? It's just shit. But nonetheless, a warm shower, warm, clean shower at the end of the day. God, that's just the best. Still thankful for that.
It is.
Things. So
it is.
The Rugged Life. This episode comes out next Monday. So is the Rugged Life available?
It May 10th. It's on shelves. May 10th across it.
And online.
Let's see.
Let's check the calendar.
Yeah, it's online. So hold on, let's look at this, and then
we'll launch this
on it.
If it's the 10th, then we'll launch this on the 10th. This will be so today, as you're listening to this, the Rugged Life is available, and you can go pick up yourself a copy, and you absolutely should, because it's a badass book. And if you own the other books, you know that they're badass as well, and you should add this to the arsenal. What else? Where can people find you?
Yeah, ClintEmerson.com has the whole little ecosystem. You'll see the books there and all the different links. So if you don't like buying stuff on Amazon, Target, Walmart, I mean, basically every brick and mortar has picked up on this book. So you can literally get it anywhere, along with all the other books, So, but the easy button is Amazon.
And if you like this, you're definitely gonna like his brand, Violent Nomad. He's got some really great T-shirts there. Anything going on with Violent Nomad these days?
No, I mean, we're, things continue to pick up. The brand evolves. I mean, it's really, the Violent Nomad is, for those that are getting it done on their own. You could be you're an entrepreneur and you're a Violent Nomad. If you're, you like to drive fast and your hair on fire, then you're a Violent Nomad. If, it's really just, it's broadening and then starting to be applied to so many other areas that I would have never thought of. It's customers that drive the train, as you know. So I'm just trying to keep up with their ideas and, everything they throw back at me.
His Violent Nomad shirts are the best one of the best ones. But I tried to find it for this podcast was because of the date. May the force be with you.
Oh yeah,
and
that's right.
I couldn't find that shirt. I don't know.
You're Jedi. I need to send you guys a new. Got a whole bunch of new designs. What are you? Extra large?
I'm an extra large. Yeah.
And what's Johnny?
He's large.
Large?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sitting at a rough 215 these days. A lean.
Yeah, you guys are doing good, man.
A lean 215.
I thought about signing up for your Agoge.
The challenge?
Just to do it.
Yeah, man, you should. Let me know. Just to see. Maybe you tell me how I can do things better. It's a kick in the dick, I'll tell you. If you're ready for a kick in the dick, but it's 30 days. You can get kicked in the dick for 30 days.
And then how many hours does it require each day?
It depends on your speed, I guess. But there's some caps, but probably, overall, there's like some 20-minute walks. We want you to go walk. We want you to take your girlfriend out on a walk. You know what I mean? Go walk the wife, go walk the girlfriend, go walk the daughter. But then like actual training, it's probably all in all with the walks, maybe an hour. Now, as you get closer to the end of the challenge, there are some like benchmark workouts that are like, grueling. That's going to take you an hour or more. But the day-to-day is just like getting that motion in every day, doing something. So some of the workouts are like 12 minutes. But then there's like at the end of the day, it's like after dinner, go on a 20-minute walk. You know what I mean? Something like that.
Yeah.
So,
but the eating is the biggest part, right?
The eating is, getting people to not eat garbage and to go to single source ingredient foods. We build out a nutrition plan for them, and for them to consistently eat healthy. That's what really does it in the 30 days. You're getting them to move more, and you're getting them to eat healthier for 30 days, and that's really where the change comes into play.
Yeah. Right. I think that's the what's that tagline I heard years ago? Abs are carved in the kitchen.
That's right. People want to believe it's like hormones and peptides and all these different things, and it's like, bro, I've been on testosterone for 10 years, and I've been chubby on testosterone, and I've been lean on testosterone, and the only difference that all comes into play is what I'm doing in the kitchen. You know what I mean?
That's right.
So
yeah.
Well, Clint,
that's cool, man. I might do it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on here. Guys, go get the damn book, man. Go buy the book. The links are below in the show notes. Go follow Clint Emerson. Check out Violent Nomad. The guy is an absolute freaking warrior and just a really smart dude. And look at him. He's so handsome as well. I think it's a requirement to be a Navy SEAL. But anyways, Clint, thank you so much for coming on. And you guys go screenshot this. And in the life that we're living in now and the world we're living in now, people need to hear this. So screenshot this, tag Clint, tag myself. And other than that, thanks, Clint. Thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Nick. Love you guys.
See you in the next episode.